Marquis had always been the center of attention. A massive Great Dane with a coat as black as midnight and eyes that gleamed like polished amber, he was a dog of luxury, pampered and adored. His owner, Victor Hanley, was a reclusive millionaire who lavished attention and wealth upon Marquis. The dog had his own velvet-lined bed, a gold-plated bowl, and meals prepared by a personal chef. Marquis wore a diamond-studded collar, and his every need was catered to within the walls of the sprawling Hanley mansion on Velvet Lane. To the outside world, Marquis was a symbol of excess, a dog living better than most humans. To Victor, he was family. But wealth and privilege are fleeting, and fate, as it often does, turned cruel. One day, Victor Hanley died suddenly in his study. A heart attack, the papers said. With no living relatives and no will, the mansion and all its contents were seized by the state. The staff, now unemployed, packed up and left. In the chaos of inventorying the estate, Marquis became an afterthought. The shelter workers, overwhelmed and underfunded, deemed him too large and too expensive to care for. No one stepped forward to claim him. On a stormy night, the mansion's new caretakers dragged Marquis to the edge of town and left him in an alley. His diamond collar was stripped away, leaving a faint pale ring around his neck where it had pressed against his fur. Rain poured in sheets as Marquis stood in the mud, bewildered and shivering. Marquis roamed the streets aimlessly, his stomach growling and his once pristine coat matted with filth. He tried to approach people, hoping for a kind word or a scrap of food, but his imposing size scared them off. To those on the street, he was no longer a regal pet but a menace. They shouted at him, threw rocks, and chased him away. Days turned to weeks. Marquis learned to scavenge scraps from dumpsters and fight off other strays for survival. But even the other dogs avoided him. They sensed something, a faint but growing wrongness that surrounded him like a shadow. At night, Marquis would dream of the mansion, of Victor's voice calling him home. But when he awoke, the cold, unforgiving streets reminded him that home was gone. One evening, Marquis took shelter beneath an old, crumbling bridge. The air there felt colder, heavier. He curled up on a pile of damp cardboard, his body aching from hunger and exhaustion. That night, he dreamed again of the mansion, but the dream was different. In it, Victor sat in his favorite chair, staring at Marquis with hollow eyes. "You were supposed to protect me." Marquis tried to approach, but Victor's image blurred and shifted. Shadows crawled up the walls, reaching for Marquis like living things. When he woke, the bridge felt darker than before, and his body felt wrong. His once glossy coat seemed to absorb the light, and his eyes glowed faintly like embers in the dark. The change was gradual but undeniable. Marquis's growl grew deeper, resonating like thunder. His presence unsettled even the most hardened stray dogs, who fled at the sight of him. He discovered a strange new hunger, one that food could not satisfy. One night, a drunken man stumbled into the alley where Marquis rested. The man cursed at the sight of the massive dog, throwing a glass bottle that shattered near Marquis's paws. The man laughed, but his amusement died as Marquis rose to his full height. His eyes burned brighter, and the air grew thick with a rancid stench. The man screamed, but the sound was cut short. The next morning, the alley was empty save for a dark stain on the pavement and long scratches gouged into the brick wall. Rumors began to spread of a ghostly black dog haunting the streets of Velvet Lane. As the weeks passed, Marquis became a legend among the homeless and night workers. They spoke in hushed tones of the Hound of Velvet Lane, a monstrous dog that prowled the alleys, its eyes glowing like hellfire. Some claimed it was a demon, others believed it was the ghost of a wronged pet, seeking revenge on humanity. Marquis no longer recognized himself. His reflection in puddles showed a creature he didn't understand. His body had grown leaner, his muscles taut and unnatural. His shadow moved independently, stretching and curling even when he stood still. And the hunger, that insatiable, gnawing hunger, drove him to wander, searching for something he couldn't name. One night, Marquis found himself drawn back to Velvet Lane. The mansion stood dark and silent, its windows boarded up. He pressed his massive body against the gates, whining softly, but there was no response. He clawed at the metal until his paws bled, but the house remained closed to him. Defeated, he slinked away, his glowing eyes reflecting the cold moonlight. The legend of the Hound reached a group of local teens who thrived on dares and danger. On a dare, they decided to break into the Hanley mansion one night. Armed with flashlights and cameras, they scaled the gates and entered the overgrown grounds. The air inside the mansion was heavy with decay. Dust blanketed every surface, and the faint smell of mildew lingered. They joked and laughed nervously, filming themselves as they explored the darkened rooms. "This place gives me the creeps." "What, scared of a little dog ghost?" As they climbed the grand staircase, they found deep gouges in the walls, as if made by massive claws. Their laughter faltered. In the master bedroom, they found a bed covered in rotted velvet, and on that bed lay Marquis. The dog's skeletal frame shimmered with an otherworldly sheen, his glowing eyes fixed on the intruders. For a moment, none of them moved. Then Marquis rose, his body unfolding in ways that seemed unnatural, his shadow engulfing the room. One of the teens screamed and bolted for the door, but it slammed shut on its own. The others tried to follow, but the shadows twisted and reached for them, pulling them back. Marquis' growl filled the air, a deep, resonant sound that shook the walls. One of them stammered, but their words were drowned out by a deafening roar. The last thing they saw was Marquis lunging toward them, his maw impossibly wide, rows of teeth glinting like the diamonds that once adorned his collar. By morning, the mansion was silent again. The teens' belongings were found scattered on the grounds, but there was no sign of them. The authorities dismissed their disappearance as a prank gone wrong, but those who knew the legend whispered otherwise. Velvet Lane was soon abandoned entirely. The mansion, once a symbol of wealth and power, became a place of dread. No one dared approach it, especially on stormy nights, when the faint sound of claws clicking on the pavement could be heard, accompanied by a low, mournful howl. To this day, the story of Marquis, the Hound of Velvet Lane, serves as a cautionary tale. They say his spirit roams the streets, seeking the comfort and care stolen from him. Those who mistreat animals are warned to beware, for Marquis's hunger knows no bounds, and his vengeance is eternal. If you ever find yourself walking alone at night and hear the sound of claws behind you, think carefully about how you've treated the creatures of this world. You might just find yourself face to face with the glowing eyes of Marquis, and once you do, there's no escape.